There are moments in royal history when a single phrase, repeated across headlines, can send an entire nation into a state of quiet alarm. This week, those words were a tragic announcement, attached to two names that rarely appear together in the same sentence: Prince William and Princess Anne, for a public still adjusting to the image of a monarch undergoing cancer treatment. Any hint of new difficulty within the family sparks immediate concern. But what exactly was said, and what does the public record actually show? Before drawing conclusions, it is worth slowing down and separating verified fact from the noise that so often surrounds the British monarchy in moments of uncertainty. Because in stories like this, the truth is almost always more complicated and more human than the headline suggests. To understand why any statement involving Charles's health carries such weight, it helps to return to February 2024, when Buckingham Palace confirmed that the king had been diagnosed with a form of cancer, discovered incidentally during treatment for a separate, unrelated prostate condition. The palace did not disclose a specific type of cancer, citing the king's own wishes for a measure of privacy, but it did confirm that it had begun a schedule of regular treatments, and that some public-facing duties would be paused while medical professionals monitored his progress. This announcement, delivered calmly, in language typical of royal communications, marked a turning point. It was the first time in generations that a reigning British monarch had been so directly transparent about a personal cancer diagnosis while still on the throne, and it changed the emotional register of every subsequent royal update that followed. In the months that followed, the king did not disappear from public life, but his appearances became noticeably more selective. He resumed limited engagements by April 2024, including a widely covered visit to a cancer treatment center, where he spoke with patients and medical staff, an appearance many royal commentators described as deeply personal given his own circumstances. Robert Hardman, the royal biographer and author of Charles III, New King, New Court, has written extensively about how the king has tried to balance continued governance with the physical demands of treatment, noting that Charles has been determined to maintain as much of his public role as medically possible, rather than retreating entirely from view. Camilla Tominey of The Telegraph and other royal correspondents have similarly reported that the king's team approached the diagnosis with philosophy of business as usual adapted, rather than a full withdrawal from public duty. It is within this broader context that Princess and Prince William's roles have expanded, not through any single dramatic announcement, but through gradual, well-documented redistribution of royal duties over many months. Princess Anne, long recognized as one of the most active working members of the family, has for decades carried one of the heaviest schedules of official engagements of anyone in the royal household. As the king's sister, her willingness to step into ceremonial gaps has never required much explanation. It has simply been part of her decades-long pattern of unglamorous, consistent service. When Charles's diagnosis required a scaling back of his own commitments, Anne's already demanding calendar made her a natural figure to absorb additional responsibilities, particularly ceremonial and representative functions that required only minor adjustment to her existing workload. Prince William's increased visibility follows a somewhat different, more layered story, one shaped heavily by his own family's health challenges during the same period. In March 2024, only weeks after his father's diagnosis became public, Kensington Palace announced that Catherine, Princess of Wales, had also been diagnosed with cancer following abdominal surgery, and that she would be undergoing a course of preventive chemotherapy. William, facing the dual pressures of a father undergoing treatment and a wife recovering from major illness, made a decision to step back from some public engagements in September 2024, prioritizing his immediate family above official duty. This was confirmed directly by Kensington Palace at the time, framed not as an emergency, but as a considered, protective choice made quietly and without dramatics. Kate would later announce, in January 2025, that she had completed her course of chemotherapy and was in a period described as remission, a moment of genuine relief that many royal watchers noted as a rare piece of unambiguously good news for the family during an otherwise difficult stretch of years. As her health stabilized the following months, William gradually resumed a fuller public schedule, and it is this resumption, rather than any singular tragic statement, that appears to have fueled recent headline speculation. Reports throughout 2025 and into 2026 have consistently noted that William has taken on a more prominent, more visible role representing the monarchy at events his father might once have attended personally, a shift that has been widely observed but never explicitly framed by the palace as a response to worsening health. Royal historians have pointed out that this kind of gradual handover of visible responsibility, while notable, is far from unprecedented within the institution's long history. It echoes patterns seen in earlier periods of the late Queen's reign, when advancing age and health considerations similarly required younger royals to step into more prominent public roles well before any formal transfer of the throne itself. Prince Philip, and later Charles himself as Prince of Wales, absorbed increasing amounts of ceremonial duty in the final years of Elizabeth II's life, a slow and largely undramatic process that unfolded gradually across nearly a decade rather than through any single defining moment or announcement. Princess, and meanwhile, experienced her own health scare in June 2024, when she suffered a head injury, believed by royal sources to have resulted from contact with a horse on her Gatcombe Park estate, leading to a brief hospital stay and concussion symptoms that caused her to miss several planned engagements, including a scheduled trip to Canada. This incident, confirmed by the palace at the time, understandably raised concern given her advancing age and her physically demanding schedule of duties. She recovered and returned to her public commitments within a matter of weeks, a recovery widely reported by outlets including the BBC and the Press Association, though the episode served as a quiet reminder that even the most tirelessly active members of the royal family are not immune to the physical toll of age and constant travel. Taken together, these separate but overlapping threads, Charles's ongoing cancer treatment, Kate's recovery, William's expanding public role, and Anne's continued but occasionally interrupted service, form a factual backdrop against which recent dramatic headlines have emerged. There has been no official palace statement describing a new or worsening health crisis for the king beyond the continuation of his existing treatment plan, nor has there been any joint announcement from William and specifically framed in official language as tragic. What does appear accurate is that royal watchers and commentators have noted, through subtle changes in scheduling and public appearances, that the king's stamina appears to fluctuate, and that both William and have visibly absorbed more of the ceremonial weight that would traditionally fall to a reigning monarch operating at full health. Whether this reflects a quiet, ongoing adjustment to realities of Charles's treatment, or simply the natural evolution of royal duty sharing that occurs in any long reign, remains genuinely a matter of interpretation rather than confirmed fact. It is worth remembering that the monarchy has weathered public health disclosures before, though rarely with the same level of transparency Charles has chosen to offer his subjects. His grandfather, George VI, kept his own serious illness largely hidden from the public until his death in 1952, a stark contrast to the modern approach of controlled but genuine openness that Charles has adopted throughout his reign. Historians and biographers, including Jonathan Dimbleby, who has written extensively on the modern monarchy's relationship with the press and public, have suggested that Charles's willingness to disclose his diagnosis at all reflect a broader institutional shift toward transparency, one designed to maintain public trust rather than erode it through secrecy or silence. Viewed through that lens, the increased visibility of William and is less a signal of hidden catastrophe and more a visible, almost reassuring demonstration that the institution has built-in resilience, a family structure capable of adapting without collapsing under pressure, even during a genuinely difficult period. None of this diminishes the emotional weight the public clearly feels whenever new headlines appear. For many, Charles's diagnosis reopened old wounds tied to the loss of Queen Elizabeth II, and any suggestion of further decline touches a raw, still healing nerve within the national consciousness. The instinct to fear the worst, especially when headlines use words like tragic and crisis, is entirely understandable, particularly for those who feel a personal, almost familial connection to a royal family they have watched for decades through celebrations, weddings, funerals, and now illness. Yet the responsible response to such headlines is not to dismiss public concern outright, but to ground it firmly in what has actually been confirmed by official sources. That confirmed reality includes a monarch undergoing treatment with cautious, measured optimism, a family adjusting its rhythms to protect both his health and the institution's continuity, and two senior royals, William and Anne, doing what royals before them have always done in moments of strain. They have stepped forward, not to replace, but to support a system under pressure. This pattern of quiet reinforcement, rather than dramatic rupture, is consistent with how the monarchy has historically responded to periods of vulnerability, choosing continuity and visible steadiness over public displays of crisis, even when private anxieties may run deep within the family itself. It is also worth noting how much scrutiny the royal family now faces in an era of constant digital news cycles, where any scheduling change or subdued public appearance can be rapidly reframed as evidence of catastrophe, regardless of the underlying facts. Royal correspondents have repeatedly urged caution around unverified claims, noting that official channels, Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace statements, remain the only reliable source of confirmed health updates. Speculation, however emotionally compelling, should never be mistaken for confirmed fact, particularly on a subject as sensitive and consequential as a monarch's health during an ongoing course of medical treatment. In the end, this story is less about a single shocking revelation and more about the quiet, human reality beneath the crown, a family navigating illness, recovery, and duty in full view of a watching world. It is a reminder that even those born into extraordinary privilege are not exempt from the ordinary fears that accompany a serious diagnosis, the uncertainty of treatment, the strain on those who love them, and the difficult balance between public responsibility and private vulnerability that so many families quietly understand from their own lives. There's also a broader institutional lesson embedded in this story, one that extends beyond any single family or reign. Constitutional monarchies depend, in part, on a perception of continuity, the sense that the machinery of state ceremony and public representation will continue functioning regardless of any individual's personal circumstances. By allowing senior royals like William and Anne to visibly step into expanded roles during Charles's treatment, the institution demonstrates precisely that continuity in action, rather than leaving the public to wonder whether the system itself might falter under strain. This is arguably why such transitions, however emotionally charged they appear in headlines, tend to unfold gradually and without ceremony, because their quiet, steady nature is itself the reassurance the public needs. Whatever comes next for King Charles, for William, and for Anne, the public record so far suggests resilience rather than collapse, adaptation rather than tragedy. And perhaps that, more than any dramatic headline, is the truer story unfolding before us. Not one of shock, but a family quietly proving that duty and compassion can hold steady, even when health cannot be guaranteed, and even when the world is watching.